Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1146 for January 25th, 2026. Happy Burns Night. Coming up in a few minutes.
Starting out in the distillery, learning about the process of distillation. In the lab, learning about all the functions in the lab. So it was a really good foundation for my future, even though I didn't know it at the time.
Drew Mayville has been master blender at Buffalo Trace for the last 21 years, and his fingerprints are all over classic whiskeys like George T. Stagg, W.L. Weller, and of course the Pappy Van Winkle whiskies. His career stretches back 46 years to when he went to work for Seagram's in his native Canada, and he spent a couple of years with Diageo after the breakup of Seagram's. I'll talk with Drew Mayville on this week's WhiskyCast In-Depth. That's just ahead, along with the What I'm Tasting This Week department, Behind the Label, and much more. The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series.
Hey, it's Gabriel from Dewar's Whiskey. Here's a quick tip. Whenever you're pouring great whiskey, especially something like Dewar's 12-year, don't overthink it. All you need is a few glasses and a couple of people worth sharing it with. The rest takes care of itself. Back in a bit.
Let's get started with the week's news. Updating our lead story from last week, U.S. President Donald Trump will not impose punitive tariffs on the U.K. and 7 other European countries for their support of Greenland. Those punitive tariffs would have doubled the current tariff on Scotch whiskey imports, which is already costing the industry £4 million a week. Meanwhile, brace yourselves for another partial shutdown of the U.S. government as early as this coming weekend. The Senate must still pass a funding bill to keep the government open after January 30th, but Democratic senators want to strip funding for immigration and customs enforcement out of the larger package and vote on ICE funding separately. The Treasury Department's Tax and Trade Bureau has just cleared the backlog of liquor label approval applications from the last 6-week-long shutdown last fall. Some good news out of Ireland this week. Powerscourt Distillery has been saved from liquidation. The distillery on the Powerscourt estate near Dublin has been acquired by U.S. private equity firm Altiva Management. The deal is expected to close in the next few weeks and includes the distillery's own maturing whiskey stocks. The receiver will sell separately the sourced whiskey used for Powerscourt's Furcullen whiskies. All 13 employees at the distillery are expected to keep their jobs after the sale. Not so good news out of Scotland, where Diageo is planning to close the visitor centre at Clynelish just 4 years after investing millions to upgrade it as part of the Johnnie Walker Four Corners project. No date has been set for the closing, but the distillery will continue production as usual. And while Clynelish is closing to visitors, Fife's Inchdarney Distillery is throwing the doors wide open. Inchdarney's Scott Fraser told attendees at his Victoria Whiskey Festival Masterclass last weekend that the distillery will open to visitors in the coming months.
We're opening up to visitors finally. We've got such a fantastic distillery. There's so much to showcase. Just some fantastic varieties of Scotch whisky that we're going to be able to make, and I think it would be a shame if it wasn't opened up to the world to come and see. So the timeline's to be confirmed, but hopefully open for this summer. We're currently hiring for a visitor centre manager, so if you want a job, give us a shout.
What does it take to open up as a distillery like this that was never designed for visitors?
So that's going to be the job of the new visitor centre manager, but hopefully I'll be able to give them a lending hand, as I've worked in various different visitor centres beforehand. But the distillery, as you know, Mark, has been open to visitors that haven't been paying visitors before, but we just want a chance to be able to showcase it all.
The distillery is located just outside of the town of Glenrothes and produces the Rye Law single grain Scotch whiskey and the Kinglassy line of single malts. Ontario Premier Doug Ford's threat to pull Crown Royal Canadian whiskey out of his province's liquor stores next month is generating opposition from other provinces. Ford wants to punish Diageo for closing a Crown Royal bottling plant in Amherstburg, Ontario next month, but his counterpart in Manitoba and Quebec's finance minister are arguing against the move, claiming it could affect Canadian jobs nationwide. Diageo will continue to produce Crown Royal in both provinces. In addition, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union has come out against the planned boycott. It should be noted that the UFCW is not the union representing workers at the Amherstburg plant. The raw cost of bottles for many distillers may be going up. China plans to stop offering export tax rebates on its exported goods starting in April, and that will impact distilleries that source their glass and ceramic bottles from China. Rockwood Glass Group CEO Henri Berthet expects the biggest impact to affect low-priced, high-volume bottles, where the export incentives helped keep prices low. Australia's Lark Distillery has unveiled a new range of whiskies. The debuts of Fire Trail, Devil's Storm, and Ruby Abyss came at an event in Kuala Lumpur. There's no word on pricing. And congratulations go out to founder Bill Lark, the godfather of Australian whiskey. He's been made a member of the Order of Australia for his contributions to the country's whiskey industry. Other new whiskeys to mention this week. Lockley Distillery is out with its oldest whiskey yet, a 7-year-old single malt distilled in 2018 and matured in first fill bourbon casks. Only 2,000 bottles are available globally at 90 pounds a bottle. Glencadam is releasing a new 17-year-old single malt scotch finished in French Calvados barrels. The limited edition release is priced at around $190 a bottle. Kentucky's New Riff Distilling has released its latest batch of Balboa Rye, made using an heirloom grain whiskey used widely in the 1940s. The mash bill is 95% Balboa Rye and 5% malted rye, and it's bottled and bond at 50% ABV. It's priced at $59.99 a bottle. Woodford Reserve has released the 2026 edition of Double Oaked, which gets extra maturation time in a second deeply toasted and lightly charred barrel. And Old Forester has brought back its 1924 edition 10-year-old bourbon. It's available online and at the distillery in Louisville. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Let's check the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Whiskey Global is this Saturday night in Kelowna, British Columbia. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society's U.S. chapter has Burns Night tastings next week, starting next Tuesday night, February 3rd at Jack Rose in Washington, and continuing each night this week in Fort Worth, Texas, Denver, and Los Angeles, with tastings in Portland, Oregon on the 8th and Seattle on the 9th. The Aberdeen Whiskey Shop in Aberdeen, Scotland has a Berry Brothers and Rudd whiskey tasting on Friday the 6th. The Kentucky Bourbon Country Auction and Celebration is February 13th through the 15th in Louisville, and the Whiskey Exchange's annual Welcome to Whiskey Show is February 27th and 28th in London. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys, but our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. Whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey, that's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025, Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey, George T. Stagg, Sazerac Rye, and Buffalo Trace. All of these whiskeys carry the fingerprints of Buffalo Trace master blender Drew Mayville. The Canadian native has been Buffalo Trace's master blender for the last 21 years, but his career goes back much longer than that. He spent 23 years at Seagram's before spending 2 years at Diageo following the breakup of Seagram's. Drew led 2 tastings at the Victoria Whiskey Festival last week, and we talked after his Saturday afternoon masterclass.
You got your start at Seagram's 46 years ago. Tell me about that, those early days.
Those early days were exciting because I didn't know what the future held. Starting out in the distillery, learning about the process of distillation. In the lab, learning about all the functions in the lab. So it was a really good foundation for my future, even though I didn't know it at the time. And a couple years into that, they were looking for someone to go to the bottling area, and that's where I went. And actually, they told me to go. I didn't really have a choice because I was the youngest person at the time. And they just, because nobody wanted to move over there that had any seniority at Seagram's. They loved the distillery because that was the place to be. And so they pushed me over there, and actually it was the best move ever because that's where I learned how to taste. And that's where the quality was. And I grew up through that whole system of quality at Seagram, which was really important to Seagram.
Did you work with the folks in Kentucky at all at Seagram's?
Yeah, that came later as I became more involved with the blending aspects, like Four Roses. I used to travel to Lawrenceburg, Indiana a lot, that plant. So it just evolved over time. It wasn't just real quick. It just took years and years.
How did you develop your nose?
I think part of it is hereditary. It was actually, my mom was very sensitive to everything, and I was as a growing up too. But as you developed, you had exposure to the different whiskeys that Seagram made, and different, and I'm not just talking bourbon, but Canadian whiskey, even Scotch and cognac, because Seagram had all those products across the globe, and I was exposed to that through my career. So that really helped me develop my nose and my taste to different products, not just whiskeys.
You moved to Buffalo Trace mid-career. What was that like?
Well, that was kind of a leap of faith, looking for an opportunity to help build something, and that's, I couldn't have planned it any better the way it turned out, because Buffalo Trace was not a well-known distillery, but the products that they made there were absolutely fantastic, and you had to have some faith in the company. And I was getting a little tired of the large company because this was quite small at the time. So I wanted to build something or help build something, and that's exactly what I found. It was the best move ever.
You worked with Gary Gayhart originally as master distiller. Tell me about him.
Well, Gary was a quiet gentleman. He didn't talk a lot to different people, so I had to go see him more than he came to see me, but I did work with him at the beginning before Harlan took over a few years later after it. Because I was the master blender coming in, and Harlan was still in the distillery as a supervisor or manager, and Gary was the distiller. So Harlan took over, I think, the year after I came to Buffalo Trace.
And you missed out on Elmer T. Lee, but I know you worked with him on his bourbons.
Yeah, I used to sit with Elmer in my office and talk about different things, and then we would taste together. We would taste originally a lot of different things, but then as he became older, he was only tasting Elmer T. Lee product, and we would sit and taste his product. He really liked the sweeter, fruitier taste profile, not so much dry oak flavors on the finish. So if you ever taste Elmer versus Eagle Rare, you'll see quite a difference, not just because of the slight difference in mash bill, but because of the locations where we pick Elmer's products from. It gives you that sweeter, fruitier taste profile, not so much dry oak on the finish. And he liked that. He loved that. That's what he liked.
How do you get various tastes out of bourbon that's all distilled the same using that rye mash number 1?
Well, that's a big question, because you can talk about all those variations in the different variables that go into making bourbon, from the wood itself, each barrel being different like a fingerprint, through to the fermentation process, if that varies a little bit, through the aging process, where it's aged in the warehouses, in the floor, where the warehouse is situated. I mean, there's all those variables, so you're going to get differences all the time.
You did the Single Oak Project years ago to try to tease out some of those variables. If I remember correctly, there was a plan to produce a Single Oak Project bourbon.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because Harlan didn't return my emails when I asked him about it.
Well, we don't say what's coming out, but stay tuned.
Because I know the plan was to produce a bourbon that replicated the winning bourbon in the Single Oak Project.
Correct, and that's what we're doing. So it's going to come out when it's ready. That's what we usually say. I don't really have knowledge. Sometimes I work on projects that I don't see come to fruition for a year or 2 years. So it just depends on when they want to release certain things. And sometimes it takes longer to bottle or sample. There's all kinds of variables into that. So I really don't get involved when exactly going to release. Even when they bottle, it doesn't mean they're going to release it the next day.
How much input do you get into new product development?
Well, today less because I'm doing more ambassadorial work. In other words, I'm going around the world training, educating people about our products. So less and less, but I've hired a great team of people over the years, and now they're taking charge of that.
Last question. Harlan got his name on a vodka. When are we going to see something named after you?
Well, maybe you never know. But I have my signature on a few bottles, so not named after me, but our last drop release from Buffalo Trace has my fingerprints all over it.
Thanks to Buffalo Trace Master Distiller Drew Mayville for spending a few minutes with us on WhiskyCast In-Depth this week. It's brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly and we do them right. We start with a smooth single grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
I've been fighting a chest cold for the last few days, so my dramming has been for medicinal purposes rather than evaluating new whiskeys. So let's look at 3 whiskeys I tasted last weekend at the Victoria Whiskey Festival, starting with the new Highland Park Heather Cask Strength. Were it not for the recent rebranding of Highland Park, this would have been named Cask Strength Edition number 6. It's bottled at 63.4% ABV. The nose is earthy with mushrooms, heather, honey, and a subtle oakiness. The taste has a nice balance of oak tannins, heather, garden soil, dark fruits, honey, and soft spices, while the finish is long and rich with touches of heather and honey. It lives up to its name. I'm scoring the Highland Park Heather a 93. Inchdarney Distillery recently released King Glassy Double Matured 2017 vintage. It's an 8-year-old single malt that spent its first 5 years in a combination of first and second fill bourbon barrels, then the final 3 years in Amontillado fortified wine casks. It's bottled at 46.3% ABV. The nose is buttery smooth, with touches of toasted oak, dried fruits, a light peatiness, leather, and tobacco. The taste is smooth and smoky with a nice touch of peat and notes of grilled fruits, honey, leather, tobacco, and vanilla. The finish is long and smoky with a touch of grilled fruits, and I'm scoring the King Glassy Double Matured 5 Single Malt a 92. Finally, let's look at the Tamnavulin 1979 from the distillery's Vintages collection. This one was bottled in 2019 at 39 years old and spent most of its life in ex-bourbon barrels before being re-racked into Methuselah sherry casks. It's bottled at 46.5% ABV, and the nose has touches of clementine oranges, ginger, figs, and almonds. The taste has notes of fresh pineapple, dark fruits, coffee beans, and subtle spices, while the finish is long and fruity. I'm scoring the Tamnavulin 1979 Vintages Collection release a 94, and we want to wish the best of luck to Leon Webb, Tamnavulin's distillery manager. He's leaving the whiskey industry at the end of the month to become a financial advisor in Speyside. I'll be adding these whiskeys to our searchable list of more than 3,900 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com. Let's open up the WhiskyCast community app now and see what people are talking about this week. The closing of the Clynelish Visitor Center was top of mind for many community members. Ian Bruce posted from Australia, "Just my own opinion, but if tours were made at a much affordable and accessible price, I think this may not be the case. Really hope the staff and employees can stay at work." From Rick at the Whiskey Zone, "There are obviously numbers driving this decision that we're unaware of, but from the outside, it seems to me that a visitor center is an easy way to keep cash coming in on a daily basis while production levels go down." Once again, we need to emphasize that production at Clynelish is not being affected by this move. Dan posted this from Scotland. "Seems a surprise to be completely closing their visitor center rather than just dialing back on the tours. Hopefully a temporary situation." And Triple H added, "This is sad. Clynelish used to be a well-respected malt. As baby boomers like myself are having less impact on the market, the general demand for spirits is plummeting amongst millennials. Hopefully this means lower prices and a buildup of reserves of older casks. Unfortunately, it means closure of more distilleries. We've seen this before." We have seen it before, and I suspect we'll see more distilleries shutting down for at least part of the year in 2026. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, we'd love to hear from you. Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. And since it's Robert Burns' birthday today, let's look at the Bard of Scotland. Born in Alloway, Scotland on this date in 1759, he was the oldest of 7 children, and as such, spent most of his time working on the family farm as a young man. He was largely homeschooled, though he did attend school irregularly. After failing as a farmer in 1786, Burns took a job in Jamaica as a bookkeeper on a rum plantation, and part of his job was to oversee the enslaved blacks on the plantation. He never wrote about his experiences, and historians point out that at the time, the abolitionist movement was just beginning to take hold in Scotland. He never made it to Jamaica, though. To raise money for his passage, he published his first book of poems. The book was a success, and Burns instead moved to Edinburgh, where he fell in with Scotland's literary elite. In 1788, he returned to Dumfriesshire, and a year later became an exciseman, while continuing to write poetry and songs that live to this day. Burns died on July 21st, 1796, at the age of 37. That's a heavily edited history of Robert Burns. We won't even start on his love life, for instance, for it's something for which he was well known. The cottage in which he was born is now a museum in Alloway, and his home in Dumfries serves as a museum as well. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and, of course, a complete archive of past episodes going back to 2005. We'd love to hear from you. Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store, or find us on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
There's something special about opening a bottle of Dewar's 12-year with the people who matter most. It brings out the stories, the laughter, and the kind of moments you don't plan, but never forget. Built on tradition, made for right now, and best when shared. Dewar's 12-year-old.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you each week from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.